Okay, we're going to try this with better sound quality probably. So we're looking at problem solving, just a wee intro for S3 Physics, just to get you started, because I know it's quite difficult when you're just starting this and you've not got a teacher to explain stuff. So to help us get started then, just to make sure you understand, in physics we use a lowercase v for speed, or velocity in fact. We don't use capital S, always a lowercase v. The reason for that is because S is used for something called displacement, and you're going to find out more about that in S4. Similar with time, we always use a lowercase t. Capital T is used for temperature. And distances, small d, never capital, because we don't even use the capital D in National 4 or 5 physics, so stick to lowercase letters when we tell you to. So let's look at this example question. You have to find the speed of a dog that travels 450 metres in a time of 90 seconds. It's a fairly straightforward question and probably most of you can solve it, but what I'm really looking for is how you lay out your work. So what we'd like you to do is, on one side of your page, write down everything that's known, all the information you can extract from the question. So for example, we know the distance travelled is 450 metres, and we also know the time is 90 seconds. We've been asked to work out what the speed is, so we use v for speed, remember, and put a question mark next to that because that's what the question is asking you. So we've got those bits of information now. We don't care that it's a dog, we don't care about anything else that's in the question. That's the bits that's important. Now we can actually go and do the solution on the right hand side of the page. So every question has got two parts to it. The known information on the left, your solution on the right. So the solution should have three parts. The first part is writing down the equation. That gets you 1 mark. The equation is speed, v, equals d for distance divided by t for time. That gets you 1 mark, just writing it down, and you have to write it down. Underneath that, what you would next do is put in the same thing, except you change the letters and turn them into numbers. So your d becomes 450, your t becomes 90. That gets you another mark. You just write it down. And then finally, after that, you get your calculator out and you work out what the actual answer is. And of course it's 5. Now you have to write in metres per second because it's a speed, and there are various ways of writing speed. There's kilometres per hour, there's metres per second, there's miles per hour, there's any number of variations, but we're dealing with metres for your distance and you're dealing with seconds for your time. Therefore it becomes metres divided by seconds, which is metres per second. 1 mark. So that's how you lay out that example of a question. Let's have another example that's maybe a wee bit trickier. Example 2. Find the speed of a car that travels 24 kilometres in a time of 30 minutes. So again, left hand side, write down what you know. We know the distance is 24 kilometres. Now kilometres, 1 kilometre is 1,000 metres. So 24 kilometres is 24,000 metres. We need to put it into metres, because we're going to get metres per second, so we need to have it in metres. The time is 30 minutes, and each minute is 60 seconds, of course, so it's 30 times 60, which is 1,800 seconds. And finally, we write down what the question is asking us to find out. That's what the velocity is, so v equals a question mark. So now we go ahead and solve it using the same sort of process as before. We're going to work out the speed, so speed equals distance divided by time, 1 mark. Next we write the numbers. So the distance was 24,000 and the time was 1,800. 1 mark for that. So we've already got 2 marks. Next we get our calculator out if we have to. I would recommend you always use your calculator just to make sure. And here's the thing, your calculator is going to say something like this. Don't write that down, please. Because what we in physics like you to do is to round it to a sensible number. Now in this case you could round it to 13, 13.3, maybe even 13.34, but I'm going to go with 13.3 metres per second, and that gets you the final mark. Now you don't get any marks unless you write the metres per second in, right, at the end. So that final mark is for the answer, 13.3, rounded to a sensible number, plus the unit of metres per second. Hopefully that helps. So you can see there's areas where you could get wrong here. So you've got to convert your distance from kilometres into metres. You've got to convert your time from minutes into seconds. Then you do your calculation and then you give your answer in metres per second. Let's have another example. Example 3. Find how far an athlete runs if they run at 6.44 metres per second for 4 minutes and 8.5 seconds. Again, we're having to convert the minutes into seconds. Okay? So the first thing we do was write down what we know. We know the distance is the thing we've been asked to work out, so that gets the question mark this time. We know the time is 4 minutes and 8.5 seconds, so it's 4 times 60 for 4 minutes. Then you add on the 8.5, which gives you 248.5 seconds. We have to convert it into seconds first. And finally, we know the speed is 6.44 metres per second. So as I've done the preparation work, now we're ready to go ahead and solve it. So when it comes to the solution, we've got to write the equation. Now we are being asked to work out where the distance is equal, not the speed. So what we can do is we can use a triangle like this to help us to rearrange the equation. Now you might have seen something like this in mathematics, maths, and we're wanting to find D. So there's the D. Now you can see that V and the T are beside each other in the triangle. And if they're beside each other in the triangle, they must be beside each other in your equation. So the distance becomes V right beside the T, and when the two are beside each other, it means multiplied by. So distance is speed times time. Get your mark for doing that. Next you put in your numbers, so it's 6.44 times 248.5. Another mark. And finally, you put in your calculator. Now again, 1600.34. Do we really need the 0.34? I don't think you do. I would round it to 1600 metres. I'd round it to the nearest metre for this case. It's probably not terrible if we put in the 0.34, but I'm just trying to get used to rounding it. That's what we want you to do. Now you notice that I put in metres. We have to include the metres. You can write the word or just write the lowercase m, not capital M. Okay, so these things make a difference. Let's have a look at one more example than this one. I should just say that you don't actually have to write down what the calculator says. You can miss that bit out and just round it and write it down directly like I've got here. That would be perfect. Example 4, find out how long it takes for me to drive to work if I travel at an average speed of 20 metres per second over 24 kilometres. So again, we're going to go through the same routine. On the left hand side, what do we know? We know the distance is 24 kilometres, but we've got to convert that into metres, so that's 24,000 metres. The time is what the question is asking us to work out, so that gets the question mark. And finally, the V, the speed, is 20 metres per second. So now we can go and solve it. Now we need to write down the equation. Again, we can use the triangle to help us to work out what the equation is. We're being asked to work out what the time is, and here's the time here. So if you can see the time, the other two, one is on top of the other. D is on top of V. And since D is on top of V, that's how it must look in the equation. So the time is equal to the D on top of the V, so distance divided by the speed, 1 mark. Next we put in the numbers, so it's 24,000 divided by 20 for the speed. Another mark, and then we put in a calculator and we get the answer as 1,200 seconds. That gets you a mark. Now you don't have to convert that into minutes, but if you wanted to, it's 20 minutes, but you don't get any extra marks for doing that. It doesn't ask you to. In physics, we record time in seconds. That's the standard unit for time in physics. If the question asks you to do it in minutes, it would give you an extra mark to do that, but you don't have to do it. So I would leave that out completely. So I hope that helps, and if it did help, great. And use this to help you answer the questions. Okay? See you next time, guys.